Hey, what is up guys? I'm KBHD here, and this is the Huawei Mate 10 Pro. It's another one of those phones that you've either heard a lot about or you've never heard of it at all. For a lot of people, this isn't even on the radar. It's brand new, hasn't come out yet in the US, so it's not in any stores, it's not on any carriers, it's from a brand you may not have ever heard of, it's just super uncharted waters. But in the tech community, if you follow pretty much any tech YouTuber or any site, it's showed up in some form, in some post of one of the best phones of last year. Basically, Huawei is already really popular in a lot of Asian markets, but they also have a big media budget and they're trying to expand and make their first big splash in the United States. And this is the phone that they've chosen to make that splash. So I've got one and I've used it. And the question now is it for those 800 bucks you'll pay for it, is it worth it over the other main players that are already established in the US for like the HTC U11s or the Samsung Galaxy S8s or S9s or LG V30s? Let's find out. So first of all, aesthetically, everything on the outside, Huawei has adapted well to this, basically what the market seems to expect out of a phone in 2018 in the US. It's these glass sandwiches front and back, it's dual cameras, it's metal rails on the sides. In fact, it's built just as well here as any other Samsung phone like the Galaxy S8. Tight tolerances, precision milling, IP67 water resistant, shiny bezels. It's of course really, really reflective. It's a nice contrast actually to most of Huawei's designs from the past couple of years. I am feeling this design, maybe not in this color, but I actually do like this design. Unfortunately, being very 2018 also means no headphone jack, which is kind of the way it is. And there's also no wireless charging on this phone. It seems like they could have done it with a mostly glass back, but that's a minor one for me. I've used plenty of phones with no wireless charging. So the only weird thing for the hardware for me is just it kind of looks a little bit weird. I think something about the dual cameras being so separate like that. It's not the fingerprint reader. That's absolutely perfect, and it's extremely fast if you've ever seen it in use. And it's also right where I'd want it in the upper middle back of the phone. So I guess just in terms of looks, I think the big two separate camera rings are a little weird. Luckily, I don't have to look at the back very much. The buttons are tight and clicky and on point, and the speaker it's average. It's at the bottom. It's nothing special. Again, it reminds me of like a Samsung or an iPhone speaker because it's really easy to block. You probably get used to cupping it after a while. So the specs, they are all also up to what you'd expect for the price. It's an 8-core CPU, and this version has 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of onboard storage, and it's fast, but we'll get to the software in a second. It's also rocking a 4,000 milliamp hour battery in a phone this thin, which is pretty impressive. The only other phone that has a battery that big would be the Razer phone, and that's a thick one. But just like the Razer phone, this one has fantastic battery life. I can say this is a winner for the Mate 10 Pro. Also really, really good standby time, which may of course be in part due to the really aggressive closing of background apps, but again, battery life is killer on this thing. And then the display up front, in case you haven't already noticed, is also pretty nice. It's a 6-inch OLED display, so pretty big. I'm a big phone person, so I like that obviously. But even with the display this big, it keeps the bezels pretty small at the top and the bottom, and it keeps one of my favorite old school touches from phones of years past, which is non-rounded corners. I'm not the biggest fan of all these phones rounding all their corners off lately. I prefer keeping it a couple extra pixels, but that's just me. Also, the brightness range of this one is fantastic. It gets way dimmer than most Android phones, and I like to notice that, so using it at night isn't a pain. But it's also plenty bright and sharp and colorful for everyday regular use. So you may be sensing a pattern here. Lots of good hardware, lots of quality parts, well built, but it's just not quite the same. In fact, this phone actually hits on all 5 of my main pillars of a great smartphone. But yet somehow it's not something I could see myself using every day. There, I said it pretty early in the video, but I think the best place to illustrate this is the camera. So the Mate 10 Pro has excellent camera hardware. On paper, it's a primary 12 megapixel sensor, f1.6 aperture with optical image stabilization, and then the secondary camera, a 20 megapixel sensor, also with f1.6 and OIS. So incredible numbers. Sounds amazing on paper, probably best in class. But as we're learning, cameras are more and more about the software and the image processing just as much as the hardware itself. Mate 10 Pro takes pretty good photos, not incredible photos, but pretty damn good ones. So sharpness is great thanks to the OIS, and colors are pretty good, though I find images a bit contrasty, but that could be because I'm more used to the more aggressive HDR from my Pixel 2. Either way though, Pixel 2's camera consistently outperforms Mate 10 Pro in color accuracy and in dynamic range and just the overall range and quality of the photo. Plus it does a much better portrait mode with one camera instead of the two. Now sometimes it looks kind of unfair to compare like anything to the Pixel 2's camera just because it's that far ahead, it's that good. But part of the reason it is that good is because of the software. And I think Mate 10 Pro's camera could be a bit better than it is because of the software. In fact, that's an important sentence. It could be better than it is because of software. That's like a metaphor for this entire phone. The skin on top of Android 8.0 on this phone is EMUI, and it's not subtle. It's a pretty in-your-face skin with a couple of pretty obvious design and functional cues from iOS. I mean, that's just being real. For example, out of the box, there's no app drawer, so your home screen will just kind of look like this, just straight up icons everywhere, plus bloatware that you can't uninstall or hide, so you have to put it in a folder, but it's still on your home screen, like an iPhone. And then the share menu for an image in the gallery for an iPhone looks like this, and then for the Mate 10 Pro, looks like this. I mean, it's not subtle. Luckily, this is Android, so you can change a lot of the stuff you don't like. You can grab Nova Launcher, you can use Google Photos, etc. There's plenty of ways to customize it in the ways you want. And of course, I can say there are also plenty of additions in the software that aren't just copying the iPhone. The scroll shot screenshot feature, it isn't super new. That's more of something we've seen in Samsung skins, but it's built in here as well, where you can scroll down to take taller screenshots. In fact, it's about time this feature made it into the stock version of Android on the Pixel as well. There's also video screen recording built in with a shortcut in the quick settings. It's not the best screen recording, not the smoothest thing in the world, but it's there and it gets the job done. And also for apps that aren't the 2:1 aspect ratio natively yet, there's a full screen app button, works fine, one touch, and you're done. There's also plenty of features for making it easier to use a much larger display. So yeah, the skin, it's a bit hit or miss. It's decently customizable because it's Android. So if you don't like some of the decisions made out the box, you can change them, but not all of them. There are definitely still things that are stuck the way they are. Like one thing they built in is on most phones, you can double tap the power button and it opens up the camera. On this phone, double tapping the power button doesn't do anything. You double tap the volume rocker and it opens up the camera, takes a photo real quick. And that's fine. I mean, it's decently useful. I don't know how many people are ever going to use that first photo. I can get used to it though, but like Mr. Mobile mentioned in his review, that's kind of rough if you're listening to music or listening to a podcast or doing something audio related. Then the double tapping the volume button is disabled. It's weird. I guess why not just use double tapping the power button like everyone else? And then the camera modes. There's like 7,000 different camera modes in here based on what it thinks you're taking a picture of. And in auto mode, the camera is actually smart at quickly identifying the subject of what you're taking a picture of, which is really impressive. I'm just not sure how much optimization is actually happening once it identifies the subject. Like, is it speeding up the shutter speed when it detects a pet, or adding saturation when it detects a blue sky? I don't really know, but it would be nice to know that. So okay, at the end of the day, overall, what's the verdict on Mate 10 Pro? Putting aside all the weird rumors about the Chinese government or the weird quirks about AT&T or Verizon not putting this in stores, is it a good phone? Well, yes, it actually is. It's a really solid phone. But it comes in at $800, so that kind of puts it in a weird place where like you're choosing between this or some of the other main established players like the Galaxy S8 or Galaxy S9 or HTC U11 or LG V30. Like, is there any reason to buy this one? Basically, you should get this phone if you're a big fan of the design or if you just really want to be unique and really don't want to get one of those big main players' smartphones in the same price range. Then again, why wouldn't you? Like, those other phones are obviously quality, but with this one, you still get your A+ battery life, your great display, great build quality, great camera. Basically, whether or not you like this phone will depend on what you think of EMUI. For me, that's a pass. I'm not the biggest fan, and I'll stick with one of the big players. But maybe you have a different opinion. Maybe you're into it. Let me know. Until the next one, thank you for watching. Talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.